Hello and welcome back to Foreign Correspondents. I'm Somi Sorang with our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Japan has announced a new set of export restrictions on South Korea with the potential to wreak havoc on the Korean economy.
調査に申し上げれば約束を守らないという中においては今までの優遇措置は取れない。これ間違って報道しているところあるんですが。
So on this week's edition of Foreign Correspondents, we sit down with our panel of journalists to discuss the fallout of Japan's export restrictions on South Korea and what options the Seoul government can take in response. Fred, what was your initial reaction when news of this export restriction came out?
I mean, I was surprised. I did not expect this. It was my first thought was, wow, this is really strong retaliation. And my second thought was, oh, it doesn't look good for Japan, because if you look at it superficially, you see that Japan is going to start a trade war to defend slave labor, because that's how it looks like. So, I mean, since this decision by the Supreme Court in last October to let some South Korean victim of forced labor by a Japanese company during the war, we saw an escalation of conflict between Japan and South Korea. We saw this exchanging between the navy in the sea between South Korean ships and Japanese planes. This is quite worrisome, and this is just another step. So my worry is that what will be the next steps? I mean, there is this issue of the white list, like other products. Personally, I don't think Japan will go as far. I think they're just trying to warn South Korea. But I mean, that's the thing with a trade war. You never see where it could go, and I think it's pretty worrying.
주문. 상고를 모두 기각한다. 상고 비용은 피고가 부담한다.
今日大使にこういうことを申し上げなければならないのは極めて心外であります。
Okay, and Sakabe?
So my first reaction is, oh my God. I was so surprised because, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix are making a huge investment in Korea, and the Japanese companies export a lot of materials and equipment and components. So this is very beautiful. There is no such a company in Japan like Samsung and SK. Only Toshiba can produce NAND flash memory. So many Japanese companies pay respect to Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. So that's my concern. Yeah.
So you are shocked as well?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Okay. Did you write any stories regarding this?
I've written on a day-to-day basis. I think the most interesting thing is I've been doing this when I was posted in Japan too, so it's been 10 years for me. And you always get complaints by both sides, which I think tells you how complex this issue is and why it should be addressed once and for all. Right?
All right. So perhaps an opportunity is what you're saying. Sakabe and Fred, I am aware that both of you wrote stories regarding this. So Sakabe, starting with you, if you could explain your article.
So yeah, I wrote that this is not trade war, and this is not economic sanction. It is not retaliation. Just switching simplified procedure to normal procedure. It would take time to inspect the contract, the content of contract. It takes 90 days, but Japanese company can ship to Korean companies as they ship to Chinese companies and companies in ASEAN. Just, technical change.
今回の見直しは、適切な輸出管理制度の運用を目的としたもので、あります。対抗措置ではありません。
So also, I wrote that there is less impact on semiconductor industry because I watched the list of restriction of photoresist. So main photoresist is out of the target. of this restriction. So I think that Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix can produce DRAM memory and also NAND flash memory as usual. This is my opinion. But it will give some impact to the non-memory business is Samsung Electronics, because the curbs on photoresist only apply to those used in producing chips based on an advanced technique known as extreme ultraviolet lithography.
Then what about the restrictions on polyimides or hydrogen fluoride?
It might be, many people worried that it might be banned because of this, national security issue. So I don't know what will happen, whether it will be banned or not.
I mean, in the piece I wrote, I do think it's a retaliation. You say it's not, but at least on paper, it looks like a retaliation. And I understand that they're going from a simplified procedure to a more to a normal procedure, but it's still it's a warning shot. What you say is really interesting, because maybe the consequences will not be immediate. Maybe we will, but it's still a warning shot, and it seems to be linked. At least this is what I wrote. It seems to be linked to historical issues, and the fact that we're seeing the head of Samsung going to Japan immediately, the higher Lee Jae-yong going to Japan, and all the South Korean companies scrambling and trying to find solution, seems like they take this issue very seriously, and I think they're really worried about the risk. And as I wrote, 70% of the chips produced in the world are produced in South Korea by Samsung and SK Hynix. So the impact of this measure, we'll see what happens, but if indeed that this decision by Tokyo, by the Japanese government, slow down the imports of these products, it might have an impact on the global DRAM production, and the world economy could be affected, including the Japanese economy. So there is I wrote that there is a danger of Japanese basically shooting their own foot by slapping this thing that actually to me look like sanctions, economic sanctions.
I don't think that Japan government has intention of giving damage to Korean economy. So it will be, boomerang to Japanese economies also. So the message is different from, economic retaliation.
Okay. Andres, what's your take?
In my opinion, it's also economic sanctions, but not. Sakabe has a very interesting point. It's actually a technical issue. It's not. Maybe it's not as serious as it could be. And then again, South Korean companies are actually thinking of downscaling some production of these chips because of the excess of inventories in the market, right? But I think the important point here is how the Japanese government has wrapped this up. It's not what they have done, it's how they've put it out. And if I'm not mistaken, Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, actually, what he said in Fuji Terebi was we're exercising this stronger restriction because, and he put the example, South Korea has proved already that what happened with Korean laborers during the Second World War, South Korea has proved not trustworthy. Those are very strong words. On top of the technical issue, I think that's the most important part here. He's actually taking North Korea as an excuse and actually telling South Korea, hey, you're not a trustworthy ally. That's actually very strong language.
Sakabe, what's your take? What kind of impact will these restrictions have on Japanese firms?
Japanese firms are concerned that lead time will take longer. Lead time means the period from ordering product and picking up product. But it depends on the customers, how they feel. So if they feel uncomfortably, Samsung and Hynix might make more effort to find another substitution or try to another verifying, so supplying channel. Yeah, so,
diversifying.
Yes, but I think localization and also be self-sufficient is not so easy. Yeah, especially in terms of chemical sector.
Right.
So Japan is so advanced. It will take maybe 10 years or 20 years, I don't know.
That long for the South Korean
secure.
government to find another source?
No, to be self-sufficient.
Okay.
Localization.
Some pundits say the move is aimed at rallying Abe's conservative voter base ahead of Japan's upper house elections slated for July 21st. Why did the Japanese government decide that now is the time to slap these restrictions?
I mean, you mentioned the election, and I do think he has quite an important role. This issue is becoming big, and it's easy for nationalists to show your muscle by doing this before an election, and it's not only Japan. Like many nationalists are like using the nationalist weapon. It's so easy in so many cases, and I think that's probably one of those cases. And there is another thing that might explain why it's happening today. I read in the Korean press that Japan asked Korea to form a third nation arbitration panel to discuss the issue of forced labor, and July 18 is the deadline for Korea to answer. So maybe as well, this deadline is one of the reasons why they decided to slap this sanction now.
And according to a recent survey here in South Korea, nearly half of the respondents said the matter should be decided by international law. Some, however, say South Korea should engage in a tit-for-tat response by engaging in economic retaliations of its own, while others say the two sides should work on finding a diplomatic solution. What's your take? How should the South Korean government react? What would be an appropriate measure?
My advice is don't retaliate.
Okay.
Because Japan has more cards to present to Korea. Because Japan has dominance over a lot of materials, components, and which Korean companies need to rely on. So in case Korean retaliation, so petroleum product might be the target to Japanese companies. But it is so easy for Japanese companies to find substitution from other countries.
So you think because of the huge trade surplus that Japan has with South Korea?
Not only trade surplus, so out of components, materials, which Japanese companies have dominance over. So a lot of so many cards to present. But unfortunately, Korean companies have less cards to retaliate. So I think, retaliation is not a good idea to Korea.
So economically speaking,
Yes.
South Korea would be on the losing end if it engages in a tit-for-tat
Yeah, of course,
retaliation.
Japan will be damaged to some extent, but damage might be bigger
For South Korea.
Yeah, so South Korea.
In my case, I would give both governments three advices: diplomacy, diplomacy, and diplomacy. I mean, once again, in my opinion, this is also a window of opportunity. Let's not let this escalate at all, and no retaliation, please. And diplomacy in a brave and creative way. You have to be brave in this case. Somebody has to take this problem and solve it once and for all. Here's the thing, some people might say, hey, Japan has not said sorry, whatever. It actually has said it's sorry. I think sometimes the importance is really lies on how you say sorry, right? I mean, here's the thing, I've pointed out how important it is not to lose face in Japan, right? But we do have gestures in the construction process of the EU, like I'm thinking, for example, the famous Warsaw genuflection of Willy Brandt in 1970 when he visited the Warsaw ghetto. I think this might be what we're lacking here to resolve this issue. You need a symbol. The problem is, most of the people in the government now, in these governments,
you mean Japan
and South Korea. I mean, it's the basic problem here is they've been sitting on this problem for so long that that any symbolical gesture already is going to lose a little bit of its original strength.
But maybe Japanese politicians need some strong symbolic gesture like German leaders did. And going to Yasukuni Shrine when you have war criminals and when you're sending members of government there, I mean, that really doesn't help. They should think more what will be the reaction of the neighbors.
Here's the thing, some distance sometimes is, and you've said it, how is this going to look for Japan, imposing these restrictions with this underlying historical issue definitely doesn't bode well, I think. If you, especially if you simplify it, it's going to look bad for Japan, I think.
I mean, I agree about this 2015 Comfort Women Agreement. The fact that the main victim was still alive, by the way, we're not even consulted about it.
Right.
And I think they're okay with the money, actually. It's not about the money, ultimately.
I think it would have been so easy for
it's a gesture.
Yeah, and for maybe a Japanese leader to go meet them and talk to them. And I think there were so many things that could have been done right and were not
Do
done
it in
right.
the open.
And that's a bit of a shame.
Try to show that you actually care about the victims. Ask them. Talk to them, right? Why do this in a back room?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem right.
Okay, let's talk about international bodies and how they could possibly get involved. At a World Trade Organization meeting held in Geneva on July 9th, local time, the South Korean government formally raised the issue of Japan's export restrictions. Do you think that, Takabe, that South Korea has a chance of getting a favorable outcome if it does indeed submit this case to the WTO?
I have no idea, but 50-50.
Okay.
Anyway, so Japan has confidence that it is not a violation of WTO. It's just overhauling the procedure of how to export. So in terms of national security issue, so Japan has confidence.
安全保障のための輸出管理制度の適切な運用に必要な見直しであります WTO のルールにのっとったものであります。
Okay.
I think they do have a chance. The problem is WTO really takes a lot of time. I mean, according to what I could read in the South Korean press, it takes at least 27 months from the point of filing the complaint to receiving a final ruling.
Right.
And 27 months
Is
is
enough
way too long for companies who need product immediately. So that means that anywhere, as Andres mentioned, we need to find a diplomatic solution. We need to discuss and find a compromise before. This should be just last resort, I think.
So you think even if they do get a favorable ruling, enough time has passed to
Yeah,
do,
exactly. Yeah,
enough damage. All right, let's now talk about South Korea's reaction to all of this. A boycott movement, as I'm sure you guys are already well aware, has emerged in South Korea as a means to strike back at Japan for imposing export restrictions. What are your thoughts on the ongoing boycott against Japanese goods?
So it's very painful to me, not only to me, maybe probably to so many Korean people, because Uniqlo and Asahi, they are selling product in Korea. But not only, so it is a venture capital. So invested not only Japanese companies, but also Korean companies.
But the majority
yeah,
stakes are
that's
from
right.
Japan.
No, but majority, Korean company has majority. Yeah. So, and also Korean people are working there and then get paid and pay tax to government. So I am Japanese, but I think it is not so, ideal method.
Right.
That's a great point. It does affect South Korean economy and it does affect South Korean workers
Right.
and consumers. I mean, I know just so many people that love Japanese products and they're going to.
But I mean, maybe I will play devil's advocate, but boycott never works anywhere.
No,
It's short.
Never.
It's the effect is marginal. It works for a couple. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I understand why some people do this boycott. It's a symbolic gesture, but in the long run, boycott never really works.
We've seen it before, right? Maybe 2013 there was another campaign. It's periodical, right?
I mean, I remember the Americans like throwing bottles of French wine when we refused to go to war in Iraq. I don't think
Liberty fries.
Yeah,
Freedom fries.
the
Sorry,
freedom
freedom
fries. I mean, these kind of boycotts never last long and has strictly no lasting impact.
So you think it won't have any measurable impact?
It shouldn't.
yeah.
I don't think it should.
What's been the Japanese public's reaction to this export restriction?
I think especially elder people, middle-aged, more than middle-aged people, so agreed with Abe's decision.
Okay.
But the younger people has less interest in economic issue between Japan and Korea. So I cannot put my finger on the pulse because I'm here in Korea. So I can say any more. Yeah.
Let's talk about the future. How long do you think this trade conflict will last?
My idea is like this. So if Japan make such a restriction in terms of to win the election, so it will be settled down sooner or later.
After the election?
Yeah, after the election. But if it is based on national security issue, it will take longer. So now, as of today, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it is based on security concerns, then what would it take for the tensions to de-escalate?
It is hopeful that America will mediate between Japan and Korea. So because Japan needs to save the face, and Korean government also need to save the face. So, but I'm not so certain that America will mediate because Japan cannot mediate in the trade issue between America and Mexico or America and Canada. So in this case, I'm not so sure whether USA can mediate.
Whether they can or whether they are willing to?
They are willing to.
Whether
yeah,
they're
they are
willing
willing to.
I mean, I read an interesting analysis saying that in the past, when there were tension between South Korea and Japan, US did mediate, and US, especially under Obama, there was a lot of effort to bring people to the table. Hey, stop this, because at the time, the United States understood that it has a strong security interest, and it didn't want both of its most important allies in the region to start in a nasty war. But the America under Donald Trump is different. And some people say that maybe like US has a responsibility in this, is not mediating soon enough. So we are seeing some sign now, finally, that Washington understands that this is getting dangerous and they have to intervene, and we'll see. But maybe it's too late. We have to see how these efforts can play out. But I think, to answer back to your question on how long this trade conflict could drag, I'm hopeful that it might calm down after the election. I mean, we are seeing crazy things. Like the fact that Shinzo Abe is basically accusing South Korea of violating sanctions by sending this product to North Korea. This is a very serious accusation. There is no evidence of that.
근본 일본 측이 제기하고 있는 의혹과 관련하여 한국 정부는 최근 일본으로부터 불화수소를 수입하여 가공하거나 수출하는 관련 기업들을 대상으로 긴급 조사를 실시하였으며 불화수소의 수입, 가공, 공급, 수출 흐름 전반을 점검한 결과 일본으로부터 수입된 불화수소가 북한을 포함한 유엔 결의 제재 대상국으로 유출되었다는 어떠한 증거도 발견되지 않았습니다.
And I find it absolutely baffling to have the leader of what's supposed to be a friendly country to make this kind of accusation with no evidence whatsoever. So I really hope that after the election, things will calm down a little bit.
Okay, so wrapping up as always, if you were to summarize today's discussions as a news headline, how would you do it? Starting with you, Fred.
I mean, I think it would be the headline of more like an op-ed, but I would say South Korea, Japan, it's time to solve your historical issue. It's urgent to solve your historical issue, something like this.
Okay.
I go for op-ed style as well, and it would be more or less like Fred's. It would be trade row is just another side effect of an issue that needs to be addressed once and for all. That's it.
Okay, so Kabe, also an op-ed?
Yeah, so Japan and Korea are on the same boat. So it is kind of shaky, but it's floating, but it should keep going.
All right, guys, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Japan is often referred to as a neighbor that is close yet distant to South Korea due to the two countries' physical proximity but bitter historical tensions. Their often strained relationship has seemingly hit a new low now over Japan's export restrictions, measures that could result in a lose-lose situation for both sides. It's hoped the two countries can find a way to resolve their trade conflict so that their ties can one day be as close as their physical proximity. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.